Hey all, welcome to Screen University. So today's video is cinematic universes of directors. Now because of Marvel and DC and those comic book movies, the concept of cinematic universes has become quite popular now. But even before these made it popular, there existed cinematic universe, or rather parallels between movies of the same director. Now what happens is that a filmmaker is basically a storyteller, and inside the storyteller's mind there is one big ocean, okay, of events, finite number of events. So whatever movies come out of that mind will invariably see some kind of repetition or trend or some similarity somewhere, okay, because filmmaker or a storyteller in the end is a human being, and there will be some kind of repetition of sorts. So we'll just discuss that today. Our case in point will be Christopher Nolan to begin with. So case number one, take a look at this photograph. Now this photograph is actually a still from the movie Following. In the movie Following, there's this main character, okay, his name is Cobb, Cobb, Cobb. And Cobb in this movie is a thief. Who else is a thief in a Christopher Nolan movie? Leonardo DiCaprio. And what is his name? His name is Cobb. This guy steals regular things. Leonardo DiCaprio's in Inception steals ideas or plants ideas. So basically they're both thieves and they're both called Cobb. Following movie ends with an envelope full of a scene involving envelope full of photos. I don't want to give out spoilers. And Inception movie begins with an envelope with some documents where he goes to Saito's beach house or whatever. So basically what I'm trying to say is Christopher Nolan had these seeds for Inception way before he even made Following. Those ideas, a thief doing stuff, and even the name, they were all there for a very long time, okay. So that means the foreplay for this script began a long time ago. So that's what is that is exactly what I'm trying to say, that the number of ideas in a storyteller's mind are finite. They will keep coming out from time to time. Now another example, Prestige 2006. Christian Bale is holding a two-headed coin. That means both sides are head, and then there is a little scene that, you know, a very good scene there. Now who else has a two-headed coin? Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight. I mean, even Sholay has a two-headed coin, but I'm just giving you an example that filmmakers or storytellers tend to use similar situations over and over again. In not just scenes or situations, take a look at this, even the dialogue. In Prestige, there's a dialogue which says, breathe as little as possible. This is a particularly British way of saying it. Okay, it's not a very American way of saying it. And the same dialogue appears again in Interstellar. Don't talk, breathe as little as possible, when Dr. Brand talks over the radio. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, that cinematic parallels between different films of the same directors have always existed. It is up to the audience to decipher them. All right. Now this one is not exact, cannot be exactly called modus operandi, but it's something like you can call it a directorial trademark. Now Memento, what is that about? This is Leonard's wife, okay, she dies. Who else dies in Prestige? Hugh Jackman's wife dies. And Inception, that's 2010, by mistake it's 2014. Leonardo DiCaprio's wife dies. Interstellar, okay, so dates got interchanged here. Interstellar, Matthew McConaughey's wife dies. They're all, the basic point is that dead wife resurrects in some way or the other, either in dreams or in his thoughts, and they motivate the protagonist to do different things. This is a style, okay. It's likely to be followed everywhere else in other Nolan films, even in the future. Now case in point, Quentin Tarantino. Now Pulp Fiction came out in the year 1994. We did a video about Pulp Fiction screenplay, which is a non-linear style. Then in this scene, Butch, which is played by Bruce Willis, is trying to find the perfect weapon to attack those two guys who are in the basement. First he finds a hammer and he doesn't like it. Then he goes for a baseball bat. Then that also he doesn't like it. Now next he finds a chainsaw. Okay. Then he does that Texas Chainsaw Massacre movement. He doesn't like that also. But somewhere on the top shelf he finds a sword. Okay. and takes it. He pays very keen attention to it. That's like really geniusly directed scene. Now on that sword, something in Japanese is written. So a Japanese sword playing a very important role in finishing the villains. Guess which other film has this? Kill Bill. So that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. The ideas for films, even though the films were made much later, the seed for those ideas is always present in the filmmaker's mind from even before they start making films. Okay, so this is a perfect example of that. The kind of importance that is given to the sword in Pulp Fiction is, in fact, he loved it so much that he probably made a whole film out of it. I will have to find some material to read as to why and what is his fascination about the Japanese swords. Anyway, next in case, not just uh, concepts or ideas or storylines or some situational moments, some situations. In fact, Quentin Tarantino has used this car, right? In Pulp Fiction, Butch runs away using this car, and then he drives this 1980 Honda Civic, and 2 minutes later, after this frame, 2 minutes later, he runs into Marcellus Wallace. And then at the crossroad, this car is in a deadly crash and it gets destroyed. 1994, fine, but you know what happens? 3 years later, the same car appears in Jackie Brown, again Quentin Tarantino, 1997. So I have in fact read that it is actually the same car. The license plate must have changed, obviously, because for logical reasons, but the car is the same. So storytellers have some finite things in their head. They want to use those. Maybe it's superstition. Maybe they want to, or when they write something. Uh, I'm sure that Jackie Brown was written after Pulp Fiction. When they write something and they visualize a scene, they see certain things certain way. So maybe he imagined just this car being used here, whatever. But it's very fascinating to get a sneak peek into the director's mind. Now this is Natural Born Killers 1994. This is not directed by Quentin, but it is written by Quentin Tarantino. And in the background, this is the opening scene of that film. It's quite fascinating. We'll discuss the opening scene some other time. But in the background, you can see a jukebox. It's a box where you put a coin and your favorite song starts to play. You have to pick a song and all that. Now that jukebox is also used again in Death Proof. It's the same thing. It's called AMI Continental. All right. So there are thousands of brands of jukeboxes. Why not use something else? It's because of the fixation. Directors, storytellers often repeat themselves in different ways. Okay. Now, not too far away from home is Ram Gopal Verma. Now, Ram Gopal Verma used to be a fantastic director until Sarkar and Rakta Charitra probably. Before that, his earlier works are considered works of genius. I still respect him for the kind of work he did then. But right now, he's operating on a frequency that I do not understand, and neither do I find his tweets fascinating. However, there are things that you can learn from his scripts, learn from his style of filmmaking. His first film, Shiva, was actually path-breaking in more ways than one. It was the first, rebellious movie for the formulaic Telugu film industry. It was the first film to actually revolutionize a few things in terms of action, in terms of quiet, slow walking styles, and slow-moving screenplay but powerful scenes. It's not exactly slow moving, but you know what I'm getting at, right? I mean, the scenes are quiet. There is no overly over energetic dances or anything. It's just a pretty simple plain movie. Fantastic film. Now Ram Gopal Verma himself has a little universe from which he picks characters. In fact, his universe is far more visible than any other filmmakers, because just look at this example. This guy is Yadgiri. Okay, he's played by Uttej. He plays the person who waits tables at the college canteen. Now his name is Yadgiri, and he has this peculiar style of telling movie stories in Pakka Telangana accent. Now the same character was used in Gayam, and he in fact says that he was a college canteen waiter, and now he has become an electrician. Okay, it's a self-admitted fact by the character. Now it makes me very happy to see that Shiva and Gayam actually happen in the same universe. Okay, so Gayam happens a few years after Shiva. I mean, it's just amazing how these two great movies somehow are connected. It makes me really happy. Next is Kshanak Kshanam. Kshanak Kshanam is a fantastic film made by Ram Gopal Verma in 1991. And he stars his favorite actress Sridevi. Nobody in this world would have been more sadder than RGV when she passed away. However, what was Sridevi's name in Kshanak Kshanam? It was Satya. That's what I'm telling you. The names are there, the characters are there, the situations are there, all the low angle shots are always there. It's a wide yet finite universe in which there are props, in which there are characters, in which there are situations, in which there are styles, there are techniques. Everything is set. So every time a filmmaker wants to make a movie, he'll just randomly pick a few things, and among those we will see repetitions. Okay. Maybe the name is just a coincidence, but given Ram Gopal Varma or any other filmmaker, I don't think any name can be a coincidence. Repeating any name can be coincidence, because Amitabh Bachchan repeated the name Vijay in many of his films. Shah Rukh Khan repeated Rahul, but that's not the point. That's a different thing altogether. That's because of superstition, luck, and all that. This is because these two are from the same filmmaker. Now, in the movie Gayam, Kota Srinivas Rao is the main villain. Here, when things are going out of control, he wants one of his favorite henchmen, a hitman, to come out of prison. Now, before he is released, the kind of importance to this person in jail is it's just amazing. The kind of kind of importance that is given is just amazing. Kota Srinivasarao says, ఒక్కసారి సర్కార్ వాడు రాని వాడు వస్తే కానీ మీ ఇది అంతా జరిగేలాగలేదు or something like that. That means he is given a lot of importance. Now, when the file for his release goes to the jailer looks at the file, opens it and says that అబ్బా వీడిని రిలీజ్ చేస్తున్నారు, ఇంకా దేశాన్ని ఎవరు కాపాడలేరు బల్కే he'll close the file. That means look at the kind of elevation that this character is getting. And you know what is this character's name in this film? It is Sarkar. So, a character, an extremely powerful character who is who talks less, is very powerful, can commit any kind of crime. He has that antisocial kind of an back image, and this quiet, enigmatic character was already there in RGV's mind when he was making Gayam, probably. Even in Sarkar, I think Katrina Kaif says that, or Katrina Kaif's father says Subhash Nagre Gunda hai. So it's that kind of a thing. Some people see him as a Gunda, and exactly what Sarkar in Gayam is. So that those in computer terms, these are settings. Okay, these are settings for a character. It's a template. That template with some modifications has been applied here. Powerful character which everybody fears. Finish. Sarkar. Now, the last one for today is Shiva. In the movie Shiva, the villain is played by Chakravarti. Now, Chakravarti's name is not J.D. Chakravarti. He got the name J.D. because of this film in which he played the character J.D. Rao, like Allari Naresh. Before Allari Naresh was Naresh. So this character was Chakravarti. He became J.D. Chakravarti afterwards. What does J.D. stand for? J.D. stands for J. Durga Rao. That's the name of his character. And 4 years later, there was a film in which the lead character was called Durga. Nothing but Gayam. So what I'm trying to tell you is that filmmakers have a universe of their own. There is a large, extremely large pool of resources that a director has, from which he will pick things, tell you a story. Now, this observation is not that I'm making it for the first time. Okay, I have observed a few things which are common, and I always wanted to talk about it somewhere, but this video gives me that opportunity. Then while doing some more research, I came across this quote. There are millions of quotes, and I'm lucky to having found this. Here, French filmmaker Jean Renoir says that a director makes only one movie in his life. Then he breaks it up and makes it again. So that's what this is about. It's exactly the same thing what I've been trying to explain to you. That if you put all movies of one director together, it is actually one big movie that is there in his head. And there are a few more. Some are yet to come out. Alright? And when that pool finishes, all the resources in that pool are done, you can say that the director has, is past his prime. Only director who has not gone out of form is Martin Scorsese, who has been making films since the 60s. For the last 6 decades, he has been giving blockbusters. But it is to be believed that any filmmaker has a limited amount of creativity. There is that finite pool from which they will pick up material and make a film. Even Quentin Tarantino doesn't want to make beyond 10 films. That is the reason for it. He says, by 10 movies you are done. All your stuff has come out. Already people have started complaining about Hateful Eight and all that. But I like the movie for a very different reason. But yeah, so that's how it is. all films are connected, everything is connected in terms of one director's many films. Okay, and so that's today's video. Do like, subscribe, share, and write to me if you have any thoughts or leave a comment here. Thanks for watching. I'll be back again for more creative and curated content. Please follow me. Please subscribe to my channel. And I'm on Twitter by the handle Double Masala at DOUBLEMASAALA. So see you then. Bye bye.